Today we will be discussing polyamory. Most humans have been conditioned to desire a monogamous relationship. This conditioning leads many to believe that monogamy is the only option. Kristen Kless, author of Polyamory, Intimate Practice, Identity, or Sexual Orientation, wrote, "The governmental policies and legal provisions of many societies continue to invest into monogamy as an assumed indicator of commitment, stability, and authentic kinship bonds. Cultural norms put pressure on people to be monogamous. The law, too, is practiced in ways that promote and institutionalize monogamy. This conditioning of monogamy is ingrained in us not only in relationships depicted in the media, but there is not usually positive representation of those that have multiple sexual partners." Stallings says, "The assumption that there is anything ethical about monogamy and its inherent ideologies about possession, love, and intimacy must continue to be rigorously disputed, and the ways in which it is contested become just as important as the dispute." So, how can the world go about disputing monogamy? Dictionary.com defines polyamory as the practice or condition of participating simultaneously in more than one serious romantic or sexual relationship with the knowledge and consent of all partners. So then what would polyamory be categorized as? Some have made the argument that polyamory is a sexual orientation, or at least that it should be designated as a sexual orientation so that polyamorous people can be legally protected from discrimination. However, Cleese thinks this could be limiting because the equation of polyamory with sexual orientation may undermine the disruptive potential of the category polyamory, achieve only selective protection under the law, obstruct the ability of poly movements to pursue broader alliances, and foster a politics of recognition at the expense of a more transformative political agenda. Labeling polyamory as a sexual orientation could also be confusing and/or damaging because poly people also identify as some sort of sexual orientation. People might assume that polyamorous people are bisexual, for example, but this is not always the case. An example would be Holly Hawk's adopted dads in BoJack Horseman. They're in a gay polyamorous relationship with 8 men. Holly Hawk's adoptive dads give her a much more positive upbringing than would have been possible in BoJack's abusive family that claims to be monogamous but in fact struggles with issues of infidelity. Therefore, the show seamlessly illustrates the reality that the nuclear family does not necessarily provide a better home environment than a polyamorous family of 8 dads.
You know Sunday's my writing day. Sundays are the one day that are just for me and my craft. And still, you and the black hole that birthed you conspire to ruin it for me. What am I supposed to do now? Just go back to writing? I'm out of the zone now. The whole day's shot, all because of you and that brittle wisp of a woman you made the mistake of making your mother.
Within the context of this class, we of course see polyamory functioning in Octavia Butler's Fledgling. With Shory's relationship to her symbionts, Shory literally needs to have more than one symbiont to sustain herself, which is a pretty sharp contrast to those in monogamous relationships that feel as though they could never be anything but monogamous. Shory's natural desire for multiple symbionts questions the idea of monogamy as being natural, quote unquote. In their novel, Funk the Erotic, Stalling frames their argument about polyamory within Fledgling through Shory's memory loss. Quote, "Butler's construction of Shory as a blank slate without memory, land, or orientation does not keep her from having family, intimacy, and relationships. It simply insists that she can have them without prior knowledge of how to make them." End quote. Shory's non-monogamy allows her to take ownership of her own body and relationships, despite the regulation typically imposed upon black female bodies. On page 85, Wright has just found out that Shory must have multiple symbionts in order to survive. He asks her if she will have sex with these symbionts, and she replies, "With my symbionts, if both they and I want it. For the moment, that's you." And Wright begrudgingly replies, "For the moment." Considering that Shory had no memory upon starting her relationship with Wright, his autonomy in the matter is questionable. However, the two had never even discussed their relationship being monogamous, and Shory does what's best for her despite the cultural norms proposed by Wright. Stalling and Butler use a non-human, yet human-like subject like Shori to discuss modern conceptualizations of what a relationship should be, precisely because it allows for this blank slate and reclaiming of relationships and sexuality. Stalling says, quote, comprehending the value of Funk's practice of affection and intimacy as represented and theorized in different sites relies upon recognition of non-human genealogies of affect and intimacy, which also produces radical genealogies that thwart capitalist arrangements of family and intimacy, that continue to place black women and black women's freedom in limbo, or what I refer to as the myth of black love and uncritical monogamists refer to as the marriage crisis. The possible transformation of how we look at relationships that the lifestyle of polyamory could initiate, as Cleese mentioned, could allow everybody, including black women, to reclaim their bodies, their relationships, and their forms of love.